I still remember the exact moment we decided to take refuge in the old Montrose mine. It was day 3 when we first heard about the evacuation orders, radio alerts crackling with automated voices, urging residents of Auray, Telluride, Silverton, and the surrounding counties to head east toward Gunnison. But by then, the roads were already choked, cars jammed up along US Route 550, headlights burning through thick dust, kicked up by panicked drivers, abandoned vehicles blocking the shoulder. The military had rolled past us early that morning, Humvees, APCs, and black choppers banking low over the mountains. But by the time we packed up and tried to follow, there was no organized convoy left. Just smoke in the trees and that strange, low-frequency screaming that none of us could explain. It was Anna who suggested the mine. She was a geologist with the Colorado School of Mines, out here on sabbatical with her younger brother, Nick. They'd rented a cabin near the Red Mountain Pass summit, a short drive from the old Montrose mine entrance, which she'd studied during her thesis work. She said the mine was sealed decades ago, reinforced during World War II, when it was briefly reopened to support wartime gold extraction. It went deep, she warned. Multiple shafts, vertical and horizontal, but it was stable, dry, and most importantly, defensible. At the time, it sounded like salvation. There were 8 of us when we reached the mine on foot. Anna and Nick, of course. Darren, a former Air Force mechanic who ran a garage in Montrose. Priya, an ER nurse from Durango, still in her scrubs. Luis, a UPS driver who'd been rerouting packages for the government response in the first week. Marta and Joseph, 2 retirees from Ridgeway, camping in the hills when the alerts began. And me, Eli Barker, 39, former Wildland firefighter and part-time SR tech out of Telluride. I'd seen a lot of wreckage in my time, but nothing prepared me for this. We reached the Montrose mine just before dusk on day 4. The old concrete foundations of the processing facility were half collapsed, graffiti scrawled across cracked walls, but the shaft entrance, timbered and reinforced with steel plate, still stood intact, sealed by a heavy iron gate that had rusted but not buckled. Anna had the access schematic printed from a historical archive, and with Darren's tools and a little brute force, we pried the gate open just wide enough to squeeze through. The darkness beyond swallowed our flashlights whole. The plan was simple. Wait out the chaos for a couple of weeks. The mine offered stable temperatures, total concealment, and a single narrow entrance to defend. We rigged tripwires and noisemakers across the approach, old soda cans, fishing line, and some bear bells from Marta's gear. Inside, we mapped out a safe zone about 100 yards in, near a decommissioned equipment bay, where the roof was reinforced with old I-beams and rock bolts. We built sleeping bunks from crate lumber and wrapped ourselves in old mining blankets that smelled of dust and oil. Water came from a capped vertical shaft Anna verified as clean via her test kits, one of the few upsides to hiding underground. Food, we rationed carefully. 2 weeks worth of freeze-dried supplies and whatever we'd managed to carry in. The radio stopped transmitting on day 7. After that, we stopped asking what was happening outside. Whatever it wasn't getting better. By day 12, we'd started noticing the sounds, deep within the mine, beyond the sections we'd sealed off with timber and collapsed rock. Faint metallic echoes, almost rhythmic, like dragging chains or boots scuffing gravel. Anna swore it was old rockfall reverberations, but Priya wasn't convinced. She said she heard voices, whispered just beyond the curve of the eastern tunnel. Once or twice, Luis claimed he saw lights flicker, distant and fleeting, like flashlights through mist. I didn't believe him until day 14. That night, while on watch, I caught a reflection of a rusted ore cart down Shaft B. It wasn't from our camp lights. Those were covered. It moved, deliberate, then vanished. I didn't tell the others until the next morning. By day 16, oxygen levels had begun to drop. Nothing dramatic at first, just slower breaths, more fatigue. But it worsened fast. Anna checked the sensors she'd rigged near the main shaft and confirmed what we feared. Air exchange was limited. The primary ventilation shaft, once a 4-foot-wide vertical bore, had collapsed near the surface. Without airflow, carbon dioxide from our own breathing had begun to accumulate. We tried rotating people out into the entrance tunnel where airflow was slightly better, but it wasn't sustainable. If we stayed much longer, we'd suffocate in the dark. That's when the suggestion came. Dynamite. Darren remembered the storage shed near the West Drift, long sealed, but possibly intact. Old mining sites often had blasting supplies locked in vault-like compartments deep in the tunnel networks. If we could find it and use the charges to reopen the main shaft, we might restore airflow, or even blast an escape route to the surface. The risk? Detonation could cause a cave-in. And worse, if those sounds we'd been hearing weren't just hallucinations, whatever was down there might already be inside the blast radius. We took a vote, all 8 of us. 7 in favour. Joseph abstained, said he'd made peace with the earth, that he'd rather sleep below the mountains than wake up to what waited above. I don't think any of us believed we'd ever see daylight again. We split into 2 teams on day 17. Team 1, myself, Anna, Darren and Nick, would make our way toward the West Drift, hoping to access the storage bay. Team 2, Priya, Marta, Luis and Joseph, would remain behind to monitor oxygen levels and maintain our fallback position. The journey was cold and silent. Our headlamps illuminated only fractured walls and rust-eaten pipes, each echo magnified by the depth. The mine was a maze of side shafts and vertical drops, some with ladder rungs so corroded they broke off at the touch. Anna navigated by memory and map, marking our path in chalk every few meters. We reached the western storage vault after 4 hours. The steel door was intact but locked by a corroded mechanical wheel latch. Darren worked the torch, and the room beyond hissed as old air escaped. Inside, crates sat untouched for decades, wood desiccated, labels yellowed. Anna scanned the contents quickly. Explosives, fuse cord, blasting caps, even gelignite in wrapped wax paper bundles, each stamped with 1987 production dates. Most people think dynamite becomes more dangerous with age. That's half true. The nitroglycerin in poorly stored sticks can crystallize, making them highly sensitive. But in cool, dry, undisturbed conditions, like here, it degrades slowly. Anna and Darren examined each crate, choosing only what appeared stable. We didn't have many options. By the time we returned to base camp, it was day 18, and the mine had changed. Luis met us halfway down the shaft, eyes wide, whispering for silence. "They're in the air vents," he mouthed. "They're inside." He led us to the central chamber. The noisemakers had been triggered, metallic rattles echoing endlessly down the stone corridors. Priya was tending to Marta, who had a gash across her forehead, blood matted in her grey hair. Joseph was missing. "They came down the vertical shaft," Priya whispered. "The one Anna said was too narrow for anything but air. We heard the clatter, then the screaming. He tried to hold them off with a pickaxe." She didn't need to say more. We spent that night in silence, our lights dimmed, listening to movement just beyond the barricades. No growls, no speech, just the scrape of limbs against stone and the slow, patient shuffling of something that didn't tire. On day 19, we wired the charges. Anna calculated the best point to blast, an angled portion of the collapse entry tunnel where we might punch through to the slope above. Luis and Darren embedded the charges using anchor rods drilled into the rock, carefully setting the fuses to minimize structural damage. If we were lucky, the blast would open a crawl space to the surface. If we were wrong, the roof would come down on our heads. We waited until nightfall. That brings us to now, day 20. As I sit against this rock wall, staring at the blinking light on the detonation plunger, I can feel them close. Just beyond the barricade, I hear their breathing, ragged, wet. They're not rushing us, they're waiting. Something in them understands caution now. That's the part that unsettles me most. These things, whatever they are, aren't just hollow husks running on instinct. Not anymore. Maybe at first. But the ones in these tunnels have changed, adapted. The longer they go without light, the more comfortable they get in darkness. The less noise they make. They don't panic. They surround. They wait, like predators that have learned we're cornered. Luis grips the blasting wire like it's a lifeline, knuckles pale, his jaw clenched as he checks the makeshift connections again. The charges are set just beyond the bend, right where shaft A kinks 30 degrees and the ceiling begins to thin. Anna picked the spot after measuring the vibration patterns with her field seismometer, a battered little handheld thing from her university lab kit. She said the fault line there was stable enough to support a controlled breach, but not much more. If we overdid it, we'd bring down the support beams between us and the entrance and bury ourselves alive with the infected. Anna sits beside her brother now. Nick is shaking, not from fear, but the early signs of oxygen deprivation. He's the youngest of us, only 20, just starting a degree in mechanical engineering when the world turned inside out. He hasn't said much since we lost Joseph. I don't think he's accepted it yet. Or maybe he has, and silence is his way of keeping it together. Darren moves to the far end of the chamber to check the barricade. 4 layers of mining cart frames, rock and scrap rebar we jammed into place to slow anything coming from shaft B. He doesn't say anything, just nods grimly when he returns. The clatter of stone shifting beyond it is faint but unmistakable. They're testing it. We have less than an hour before they breach, maybe less. I catch Anna's eye. She already knows what I'm thinking. Blow it, I say. No discussion, no drama. We've played out the arguments. If we wait until they're inside the chamber, we'll never make it through the opening. And if the tunnel collapses before we set it off, we suffocate here. This is the only window we're going to get. She nods once and hands the signal remote to Luis. Darren takes the lead. He's the only one strong enough to carry the steel pry bar and emergency jack in case we have to clear debris after the blast. I bring up the rear with the flashlight, covering the shadows as we move. Anna and Nick carry the emergency air tanks, compact 30-minute canisters salvaged from an old firefighter's cache near the entrance when we first arrived. We've only got 3. We plan to use them if we ever had to dig our way out. Now they'll be our lifeline through the dust. Luis stays behind with Priya and Marta. They'll set off the blast, wait 60 seconds, then follow if the passage holds. There's no goodbye, just one last look. Darren and I move into the shaft. Our boots crunch over loose gravel, echoing like gunshots in the silence. The air gets tighter with every step. You can feel the mountain pressing down above you. Tons of rock held up by beams driven decades ago, weathered and splintered from time. The walls sweat moisture. Somewhere far behind, the barricade groans again, a crack, like dry bone snapping. We reach the blast site. Anna double-checks the placement of the charges, her hands steady despite the stakes. 4 dynamite bundles, old corded fuse wired to the trigger, blasting caps inserted and secured with tape Darren found in the storage vault. She gives a thumbs up and steps back, pulling the goggles over her eyes. We crouch behind the rock wall bend. Then the flash hits. Not just light, heat, pressure, and sound all at once. It's not like in the movies. Real explosions don't have fireballs. They're sharp, hot, and brutal. The air is sucked from your lungs as dust floods the shaft, thick and choking. The ceiling doesn't come down, but shards of rock rain against our backs like shrapnel. The concussive wave hits hard enough to knock Nick flat, and Anna pulls him up fast, coughing. I switch on the flashlight and push forward. The rock is cracked, split outward like a broken egg. A jagged fissure now cuts through what used to be solid wall. Beyond it, faint light, grey and trembling. Not sunlight, moonlight, the surface. Anna cries out, half laughing, half sobbing. "We did it!" she gasps. "It broke through." Darren wedges the jack into place and begins cranking. Every second counts now. Behind us, the barricade won't hold long. We have to widen the fissure enough to crawl through with the packs and air tanks. The jack groans as the crack splits wider, flakes of shale dropping in sheets. I go first. The crawl space is just wide enough to squeeze my shoulders through. I drag my bag with one hand, flashlight clenched in my teeth. The air is colder here, damp but moving. Real airflow. I can taste it. Pine sap, dust, open sky. I keep crawling, scraping my arms raw, until finally I burst through onto a slope of crumbled granite and sediment above the tree line. I'm outside. The night is cold and endless. The stars are bare pinpricks above, distant and indifferent. The slope looks like an old tailings pile, abandoned decades ago, overgrown with sagebrush and mountain grass. The mine is somewhere beneath us now, sealed in silence. I wave the light 3 times, signaling the others. One by one, they emerge. Anna first, pulling Nick through by the belt. Then Darren hauling the emergency air tanks, coughing hard into his sleeve. For a moment we pause, gasping, surrounded by silence and open space. I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs. Then a scream. From below, muffled but unmistakable. We turn. The fissure we came through collapses inward with a crunch of stone, burying the crawl space in seconds. There's no going back now. And Priya, Marta and Luis are still inside. We don't move. No one speaks. The scream doesn't come again. Darren grips his crowbar so tight his fingers are bleeding. Anna lowers her head into her hands. Nick turns away from all of us and stares out across the tree line, toward the distant valley. The wind has picked up, thin and icy, cutting through our damp clothes like needles. The dust still hangs in the air behind us, curling from the collapsed rock like smoke from a dying fire. No one says it aloud, but we're all thinking the same thing. We left them behind. Not by choice, not with intent, but they're gone now, sealed into that mountain with whatever finally pushed through the barricades. The scream we heard, it didn't end with a second or a struggle or even silence. Just one ragged cry, human to the last second as the weight of the mountain reclaimed its own. Maybe that's a mercy, maybe not. The oxygen is better here, but it's thinner than what we're used to. We're at nearly 10,000 feet elevation, just below the timberline. I can feel it in my chest as I stand and take in the surroundings. There's no light pollution, none of the glow that used to hum above towns. The stars are clearer than I've ever seen them. The valley below is cloaked in darkness, save for a flicker of movement. Orange light, faint and irregular, coming from somewhere near the valley floor. Darren notices it too. Campfire, he mutters, just loud enough for us to hear. Or a burning structure. Could be survivors. Or infected, I think, but I don't say it. Anna straightens slowly, brushing the dust off her jeans with deliberate movements, as though focusing on a simple task will keep her from collapsing. She looks at the flicker in the distance, then back at me. Her face is pale and streaked with grime, lips cracked from dry air and stress. Nick leans on a boulder nearby, breathing deeply, still shaken. He hasn't spoken since the blast. We need to move, I say, voice low. We're exposed up here, and that light might mean food, shelter, even comms. If there's nothing, we'll keep moving until we find high ground and set camp. Darren nods. Anna doesn't argue. Nick doesn't react at all. We shoulder what's left of our gear. 2 mostly empty packs, the emergency air tanks, 1 sidearm with 3 rounds left, a crowbar, Anna's topo maps, and a magnesium fire starter. The old climbing rope stayed behind in the mine with Priya. She'd insisted it might be needed to lower someone through the shaft if the detonation collapsed the slope. Now it's coiled somewhere beneath tons of granite. We've got headlamps, but only enough battery to run them in short bursts. For now, we rely on moonlight. The descent takes over an hour. The slope is steep, cut with loose shale and tangled underbrush. A few times, one of us slips and nearly tumbles, but we move silently, instinctively aware that the quiet of this wilderness is deceptive. Civilization's absence has left the land too still. No owls, no coyotes, no insects, just the wind and the occasional crack of shifting branches far too heavy for deer. By the time we reach the tree line, the cold has settled deep into our clothes. The source of the flickering light is clearer now, a small structure near the remains of a service road, half buried in pine needles and vines. It's an old forestry cabin, squat and weathered, with a rusted chimney that still exhales a faint trail of smoke. The fire inside is real and recent. I signal for us to stop just short of the clearing. Darren steps beside me and raises the crowbar like a bat. Anna pulls Nick behind a tree and drops low, pulling out a flare from the side pocket of her pack, ready to blind anything that moves. I creep closer, keeping low. The windows are boarded, but one slat near the bottom is cracked. I peek through. Inside, 2 figures, one slumped in a chair near the fireplace, unmoving, the other pacing slowly, dragging a limp leg. A large rifle, bolt action, wooden stock, leans against the wall near the stove. There's a half-eaten can of chili on the table and a lantern casting long shadows across the walls. The pacing figure stops and turns toward the fire. Its eyes glow faintly, too bright, too pale. It's infected, but different, not like the wild ones we saw in the early days, those who run, froth at the mouth, claw at anything that moved. This one is methodical, controlled. It reaches down to adjust something in the fire, as if tending it. That movement freezes me, not just because it shows cognition, but because it shows memory. I retreat slowly, returning to the others. Cabin's compromised, I whisper. At least one infected, but it's not acting like the ones we've seen. It's thinking, or mimicking thought. Anna frowns. What do you mean? It's tending the fire. She stares at me, then glances toward the dark shape of the cabin. Could be muscle memory. Neural loops stuck on routines. Maybe, or maybe they're learning. Darren exhales, glancing at the sky. We need to clear it. That cabin's the only shelter for miles. Only if we can do it without drawing others, I reply. Nick finally speaks. His voice is hoarse. You said there was a rifle. I nod. Inside, near the stove. I'll go. His words hit like a slap. Anna whirls around. Nick, no. But he's already pulling away from her, moving toward the cabin with an eerie calm. I know what he's doing. I've seen it in wildland teammates after a fatality. Survivor's instinct blurred with guilt. Sometimes, action feels like the only way to stay whole. He circles wide, approaching the cabin from the blind side. We reposition around the clearing, Darren near the tree line, Anna and I to the north side. I keep my eyes on the window slats, watching the infected figure continue its slow pacing. The seated one hasn't moved. Then, a shadow passes inside. Nick. He slips through the rear door, pushed open so carefully it barely creaks. We lose sight of him. Seconds pass, then 30, then a full minute. The infected suddenly stops moving. It tilts its head, sniffing the air. Then, without warning, it rushes toward the back. A gunshot cracks like lightning. Another, then silence. I sprint across the clearing, Darren on my heels. We burst through the cabin door to find the infected twitching on the floor, jaw shattered, one leg blown off below the knee. It's still moving, trying to crawl. Nick stands over it, rifle in hand, barrel smoking. His face is stone. The other figure, slumped in the chair, wasn't alive, just a body, days dead, possibly used as bait. Anna rushes in and kicks the infected square in the head, knocking it flat. Darren finishes the job with the crowbar. It doesn't fight. It doesn't scream. It just looks up at us, eyes unblinking, as if watching, observing. Then it stops. We seal the cabin and drag the body into the pit behind it. There's no fuel for a burn, so we bury it under timber and rock. The rifle has a few rounds left. 308 Winchester, hollow point, standard hunting load. The shelves inside are stocked with basic gear. Propane, matches, water jugs, canned beans, an old ham radio. No signal, but a logbook beside it shows someone tried broadcasting as recently as 4 days ago. A final message, scrawled in tight handwriting. They come at night, But not every night. They know how to wait. If you read this, don't run, hide, listen, learn. We sleep in shifts that night. No one speaks much. The fire crackles, and the cabin holds heat better than expected. But none of us really rest. Even with the infected body buried and the door barricaded, the sense of safety is fragile, a thin film stretched over something primal and growing just beneath the surface. Each creak of the cabin's timbers, every gust of wind scraping the roof, sets us on edge. We've lived too long in silence and stone to trust anything above ground anymore. I take the second shift, perched near the boarded window, with the .308 rifle across my lap. My legs are stiff from the crawl through the fissure, and my lungs are still adjusting to the altitude. The fire has burned low, throwing red shadows across the far wall. Outside, moonlight coats the clearing in a cold white sheen. Nothing moves, but I keep scanning the trees. I don't believe for a second that the thing in the cabin was alone. It was watching the door. It was pacing, waiting, either for us or someone else. Anna comes to relieve me around 3:30. She doesn't say anything at first, just takes the rifle and sits where I was. Her expression is blank but focused. She hasn't truly rested since the mine. None of us have. As I lie back down on the floorboards, I hear her mumble almost under her breath, like she's not even talking to me. What if we didn't leave it behind? What if it followed us out? I don't answer. She's not really asking. When dawn breaks, the fog across the valley is already thinning. From the porch, we can see the valley floor stretching east, a long corridor of meadows and abandoned service roads, hemmed in by steep forested ridges. The air smells clean up here, but there's a hint of something metallic on the wind. Not strong, just enough to notice. Burnt wiring, dried blood. It's faint, but it's there. Darren brews instant coffee on the propane stove, and it tastes like heaven. He's already repaired a tear in the pack Anna carries, threading it shut with copper wire from the cabin's radio coil. Nick eats in silence, scraping the bottom of a dented chili can with a plastic spoon. The boy hasn't been the same since the mine, since Priya and the others, but no one brings it up. We pack what we can. 2 days of canned goods, some iodine tablets, the rifle and remaining 6 rounds, and an old forestry map pinned to the cabin wall. It's outdated, but it shows the main service trails and a communications tower on a ridge 2 miles east. That's our next destination. If the equipment there still has power, or if we can patch the antenna to the ham radio, we might be able to contact someone, anyone. Even a pre-recorded emergency loop would be proof that we're not the last. By 9 o'clock, we're moving. The descent into the valley is slow and tense. The trail has been choked by decades of neglect, fallen trees, eroded switchbacks, washed out culverts. Anna leads, map in hand, checking bearings every 100 yards. Darren follows close, keeping the rifle ready. Nick and I bring up the rear. We avoid open areas where forest breaks, sticking to the tree line and using deer trails where we can. Every hour or so, we stop to listen. The woods are still dead. No birds, no insects, no rustling of squirrels or deer in the underbrush. It's not just quiet, it's wrong. Around midday, we come across the first signs that the infection has reached this valley. A firewatch truck, white with faded red stripes, lies overturned near a culvert, its tires melted and windows blown out. A dried smear of blood stretches from the cab door into the trees. No bodies, no sign of struggle, but the driver's side door is still swinging gently in the breeze, like it was opened only moments ago. Anna climbs into the wreck and searches the glove box. She finds a laminated map, a signal flare, and a solar-powered radio clipped to the dash. The radio crackles with static, then cuts to a garbled voice. Words lost in distortion, but the tone is unmistakable. It's automated. Emergency broadcast loop. Darren grabs the map and spreads it across the hood of the wreck. "We're here," he says, pointing to a marker near Silver Creek. The tower is another 6 clicks southeast, just past a low saddle between 2 ridges. If that broadcast is coming from there, then it's still transmitting. I finish, which means power, possibly a bunker. Anna looks up at the tree line. Then we go. We press on. The sun burns away the mist by mid-afternoon, revealing the wide basin of the valley. Overgrown meadows dotted with wrecks, old tractors, logging gear, remnants of cabins reduced to stone foundations. The infected, if they're here, are hiding, maybe underground, maybe in the shadows of broken homes. We don't see them, but we do see what they leave behind. Around 2 p.m, we reach a dry creek bed. Bones litter the bank, animal and human, picked clean, some broken open for marrow, dozens of them, arranged, not scattered, stacked in spirals, interlocked like vertebrae. The design is deliberate, organized. Nick throws up behind a tree. Darren grips the rifle tighter. This isn't scavenging, this is ritual. Anna studies the largest spiral, her face pale. They're learning pattern recognition, or imitating it. Behavior echo. That's how primates learn. Mimicry of significance. Which means they're thinking, I say. She nods. Or evolving. We don't speak after that. By late afternoon, we make it to the base of the ridge where the communications tower stands. From here, the final climb begins. A switchback trail through crumbling shale and loose boulders, steep enough that we have to crawl at points. The tower, once used by the Forest Service and weather station personnel, looms at the summit. A skeletal steel structure braced with guy wires, crowned with solar panels and dish antennas. Below it, a small concrete utility shelter clings to the rock like a bunker. The door is ajar. Inside, we find the remnants of a last stand, blood on the floor, bullet holes in the far wall, 2 spent magazines, and a man, middle-aged, wearing a forestry service parka, slumped against the rack-mounted server cabinet. His radio is still powered, blinking with a weak battery signal. Next to him, a journal. Darren checks the man. No movement. Long dead. Anna grabs the journal. The last entry, scrawled and uneven, reads, Day 17. They're watching from the trees now. Not attacking, just learning. The last transmission went out 3 hours ago. I heard a reply. Female voice. Said she's in a cold storage facility west of Gunnison. She said they're coming for her too. If anyone reads this, the code for the repeater is 772 BK. Good luck. Anna flips through the settings on the radio, finds the input field and types the code. The repeater stutters, emits static, then connects. For the first time in days, we hear a voice, tired, raspy, but alive. This is Dr. Kira Mallory, CDC contractor. If you're hearing this, we have shelter at Gunnison. Coordinates attached. Repeat. Safe zone confirmed. Proceed with caution. Infected have adapted to low temperatures. Do not approach during night. We look at each other. Darren's jaw clenches. Nick exhales sharply. Anna lets the journal fall from her hands. There's still someone out there. A safe zone. Proof that we're not alone. But between us and Gunnison lies over 60 miles of infected territory. Mountain passes, ghost towns, and whatever's become of the human race. Still, for the first time since we entered that mine, we have a destination, a purpose, and a reason to keep going. I shoulder my pack, glance down at the endless wilderness below, and whisper to no one, we made it out of the mountain. Now let's make it out of the world. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.